Hello, scumbags. It's me, it's Andrew Fantasia, and this is High Ground. Guys, a new book came out. We've been scant on books for the past few months, it feels like. I guess because, Solo came out in May, and all the Solo-related books came out around that same time. So from like June 2018 to, February, we have been in a drought of Star Wars books. You know what, though? I'm not going to complain, because that drought was very easy on my bank account. I didn't have to buy books. I was just peachy with that. But we finally got our first big, thick, juicy novel since, oh God, I can't even remember what the last one was. Was the last one Thrawn Alliances? Damn, that was like this time last year. So it's been a year, and we finally got this, Master and Apprentice, by the one, the only Claudia Gray. Does this live up to Claudia Gray's absolutely fantastic record with Star Wars books? I am going to say right off the bat, the answer to that question is a very, very disappointing yes! It does. I tried to trick you. That's what I tried to do there. Guys, Master and Apprentice is great. It is another stellar addition to Claudia Gray's repertoire and another beautiful piece of canon to add to the Star Wars lore. Let me say this. Here's what I love about what Claudia Gray's books are doing. Other books in canon, less good books in canon, I'm looking at Thrawn, Tarkin, Heir to the Jedi, etc. These books exist just to have a Star Wars book. That just seems to be the only reason why that was printed and typed out and shipped out and, slapped on paper and sent to the masses. The only reason is just, here's a Star Wars merchandise item. Buy it. When it comes to Claudia Gray's books, and when it comes to the books in new canon that have been well put together, it feels needed. It feels like, here are the 9 movies, and there's lots of little gaps in between, pieces of story that we don't know yet. These good books fill in those gaps. They are like missing pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And we have a lot of pieces spread out before us already, because the movies tell us a lot and the comics tell us a lot, etc. But then along comes Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice, and it is a nice, juicy piece of a jigsaw puzzle that fits perfectly in a spot where we didn't really know what goes there yet. Now we know what goes there. And I think that is the best way I can sum up how books in the new canon should be versus how a lot of them are. Because at the end of the day, that is how I look at Star Wars canon. I look at it as this beautiful, giant jigsaw puzzle tapestry with lots of pieces, but also lots of blank spaces awaiting new pieces to fill them in. And when I read a book like Thrawn or Heir to the Jedi, where I'm just like, well, that was a thing. Okay, that really, that did not add anything to my Star Wars experience. I feel like I'm still staring at that same tapestry and I haven't added anything to it. With books like Master and Apprentice, with books like Leia, Princess of Alderaan, I feel 100% like I am adding pieces to that jigsaw puzzle, and that the more of these I get, I will eventually one day be able to look at the entire tapestry completely filled in and be like, okay, this is the story of Star Wars. And what a beautiful story it is. From this point on, guys, when I am on High Ground and I talk about books and comics and other entries of new canon, I'm going to split them all into 2 categories. I'm going to split them all into jigsaw pieces that fit and just useless extra pieces. This is a jigsaw piece that fits. Master and Apprentice is a beautiful story about the relationship between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. A couple of years, I want to say, they don't specify, but I want to say about 5 years before The Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon is still 17 or something, and their relationship is kind of new. They've been Master and Apprentice for about 2 years now. And it's just a great exploration of the relationship between these two men who start out as, a teacher and a student, and then they come to respect one another as friends. And you see what a tumultuous relationship that is. Because as we all know, Obi-Wan is kind of a by-the-book straight shooter, and Qui-Gon Jinn is a gambling, winking, unconventional kind of Jedi. And when you stick the two of them together, you get a great amount of chemistry. And there's a beautiful moment in the book that I won't spoil that kind of puts it all into perspective when you think of like, okay, you're Yoda on the Jedi Council. You got to give Qui-Gon Jinn an apprentice. Who are you going to assign to him and why? It really makes sense when you think about it. Like, yes, give him Obi-Wan Kenobi as an apprentice because XYZ. And when they spell it out for you, the way Claudia Gray spells it out for you, you're just like, absolutely. Those two were made for each other. And this is why Claudia Gray hit the nail on the head. Now, sure, the characters are interesting, but every Star Wars character is interesting. Almost every one of them. What is the story like? Well, guess what? The story is very interesting, too. It's sort of a political conspiracy mystery where the two Jedi are dispatched to go handle this problem that's happening on a planet called Pijal. I think I'm saying that right. And on Pijal, there's this coronation ceremony that's about to happen. They've got a young queen, kind of similar to Amidala, but even younger. She's got issues she's got to deal with. There's some shady dealings going on with the Zerka Corporation. And if you remember Knights of the Old Republic, you know the Zerka Corporation are some bad dudes. They show up. And there's a whole lot of moving pieces. And it's a very politically charged, tense story. And what I love so much about the prequel era of Star Wars is that they can take politically charged stories and make them oftentimes 100 times more exciting than the war-charged stories of the OT era. Of course, it wouldn't be a Star Wars book without new characters, too, and Claudia Gray introduces some new characters who are actually very interesting. A problem I tend to have often with Star Wars books is that when new characters show up that we don't know yet, it annoys me because they're usually just kind of there to be somebody's foil. They're not very well put together. I always think back to the character of Skelly from A New Dawn. Nobody gives a shit about Scully from A New Dawn, but like he's there because he has to fill a role. Meanwhile, we're reading, we're just like, I only care about Kanan and Hera. Like, get to the point. Claudia Gray has given us new characters that we care about, and they're very, very interesting, and they make me want to follow their adventures more. That is what new canon should do. Look at Dr. Aphra. Dr. Aphra was a new character. She came out of nowhere. She came with 000 and BT-1, and all of a sudden, you don't even care about reading Darth Vader anymore. You're like, damn, I want to learn more about Aphra and these two psychotic droids. That is how you do new canon right. That is how you introduce new characters into the Star Wars saga the right way. Claudia Gray gives us a new Jedi character named Rael Averross, who in my head I pictured Ron Perlman the whole time. But Rael Averross was, he's a few years older than Qui-Gon, so he's an older gentleman, and he lost a Padawan during a dangerous mission. His Padawan was killed, and he just kind of went off, not on sabbatical, but the Jedi sort of sent him away to be a Lord Regent on this planet of Pijal, and he's been there for the better part of a decade, kind of trying to hide away from his problems, and that's where we meet him. So he's got this very tragic backstory, and he's even more of a renegade kind of Jedi than Qui-Gon is. So he has this chip on his shoulder and this outlandish personality, and he clashes with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on several fronts. And then you got a great new character named Pax Marifer. Pax Marifer, the idea behind him is so cool. He's this odd little dude who was in a spaceship as a child. He was like 5 years old. He was traveling with his family on a spaceship when I think pirates attacked or something. I can't remember the details, but the ship was attacked. Pax Marifer hid inside like a crate, and everybody on board the ship died. And then Pax eventually emerged, and he was the only human being left on the ship, and everybody else on the ship was just a bunch of protocol droids. So this boy spent 15 years of his life, essentially his whole childhood, being raised by a bunch of C-3POs. So when you meet him, he is a very logical, offbeat kind of guy. He's like, you could almost argue like he's kind of on an autism spectrum kind of thing. Like he's very straightforward, and a lot of people find him standoffish because of that. Like he will tell you to your face he doesn't like you. He's like a human protocol droid. But he's paired up with this character named Rahara, and Rahara kind of sees him for the good person he is underneath, and they have this great dynamic. It's beautiful. I want to see what Pax Marifer and Rahara get up to in the future. Like, I want to know more about their stories, and that is just a sign of great storytelling right there. Wonderful. I'm going to get into some very, very light spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything about Master and Apprentice, pause this video and come back once you read it. But I'm not going to spoil huge plot elements. I'm just going to say there are a couple little things that I noticed that were kind of worth mentioning. First of all, there's this neat little reference to Schindler's List that Qui-Gon makes. I saw what you did there, Claudia. Well done. There is also a deeper exploration of Kyber Crystals. Master and Apprentice talks about Kyber Crystals a lot, and when they brought up the whole issue in the Ahsoka novel about how a dark side user will cause a crystal to bleed and turn red, that caused a little bit of controversy. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a huge fan of that. I like the idea of just, hey, I found a crystal, let's put it in, and my blade's going to be whatever color the gemstone is. End of story. Claudia Gray builds on that a bit more. So if you were a fan of the bleeding, you're really going to like this, because she adds more to it, where it's sort of in the sense where a Kyber crystal is almost like a living thing, and it changes color over time to respond to the Jedi who is wielding it. For all we know, Obi-Wan's crystal could have started off green or yellow, and then over time it got to know who Obi-Wan was through the Force and decided, okay, this guy is blue, and his lightsaber became blue. Again, I'm not 100% in love with this whole theory of the crystals sort of changing color on a whim, willy-nilly. Again, I'm from the Knights of the Old Republic days where you would go explore a cave and you find a purple crystal and you're like, oh snap, that's rare, I'm going to put that on my lightsaber and it'll show how cool I am. And now it's become more of a emotional thing with the lightsaber, which isn't bad. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's going to take some getting used to for me, because I'm not of that mindset yet. So if you did not enjoy the bleeding crystal theory put forth in Ahsoka, you might want to be warned going into Master and Apprentice. There is more of that on an even bigger scale. Just FYI. If you've had an itch for a good prequel era story, this is going to scratch that itch. Master and Apprentice has it all. It's got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Check. Does it have a few surprise cameos from prequel era characters? Absolutely. Check, check, check. Will you get to see Coruscant? Check. Will you get to see the Jedi Council? Double check. It's all there. It's glorious prequel era storytelling. Some of the best yet. And it's a beautiful, beautiful look at the relationship between these two characters and the doubts and fears. It really gets into the heads of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and explores, the doubts and fears of their relationship. And so much is said internally, but very little is said externally. And that is a byproduct, A, of just humanity, and B, of the sort of rigid Jedi doctrine that these two men have to follow. They're not flowing with emotion, because the Jedi way is more stoic than that. So you end up with these two men who are bursting at the seams to talk to one another, but can never seem to find the right words. And the connection made in that sense is wonderful. And it's some of the best character work from a literary standpoint that Star Wars has given us, period. Claudia Gray, you knocked another one out of the park. And then, of course, just from a storytelling perspective, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is more than I can say for a lot of new canon books. A climax, which, again, is more than I can say for new canon books. And the climax is fantastic, with some shocker moments that if this was like a movie or an episode of a TV show that you were watching with a crowd of people, there's a lot of moments in this climax where that crowd of people would be like, oh, whoa! So you can look forward to that in Master and Apprentice as well. This is a book I highly recommend. It is an excellent, jazzy, colorful edition. Look how beautiful this cover is. That is a colorful cover, and I love it a lot. It is an excellent addition to the canon library. Honestly, man, just get Claudia Gray to write them all. I don't care if that means you only get one canon novel a year. She is the master. She is the Yoda of canon books. There, I said it. Fight me. Change my mind. I'm Andrew Fantasia. Thank you very much for watching this high ground, getting high on the ground with me and Master and Apprentice. May the force of others be with you.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.